Recording in progress.
Okay, introductions of board members and guests. We'll start with our online board member.
I'm here.
Marie
Marie
Tooney.
Tooney.
Martin Zeller, board member. Paula Siverly, board member.
Robert Lee, board member.
Aaron Bear, superintendent.
Trisha Erie, board secretary.
Any agenda revisions? None? Oops. Pins are flying up there. Next up is approval of board minutes from August, sorry. Any corrections? Any motions?
Motion to accept is written. Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Next up, student representative report. I believe that we do have a student here, Jaden Jones.
Hello, my name is Julie Jones and I'm a freshman. I'm excited to get to be a part of the class and make a big impact on the school. This year I decided to quit volleyball, so now I have so much more time to be able to volunteer outside of school and also try to help with volunteering like in all my spare time as much as I can. Thank you so much for the opportunity to get to share an update from our student leadership class. We are looking forward to a great year. We posted homecoming during the last week of September, and we had Spirit Week, class competitions, and assembly activities at the halftime of the football game, and also our first dance of the school year. We have the club fair on the first week of October. Freshmen had the opportunity to visit the club fair during advisory, and then all students had the opportunity to go through during their lunch. The club fair gives students an opportunity to connect with other students and get involved. Our Think Pink fundraiser kicked off last week, and we had a second assembly last Thursday and our first pink out game on the football game that evening. Our HOSA club sold pink ribbons and did face painting at the football game on Thursday. We have girls soccer club on pink out tonight, and volleyball pink out is tomorrow night, with the boys soccer pink out is on Wednesday. All of the money we raise will be donated to a local nonprofit organization. And we're looking forward to all the annual food drives, like the canned food drives coming up soon. That kicks off at the end of November. Thank you again for the opportunity to share this update.
Thank you so much. Next up is superintendent's report.
Yeah, so we have just one big item here. It's the same time every year, Division 22 standards. For those not familiar, Department of Education, State of Oregon has Oregon administrative rules that dictate the academic standards for public education in the state of Oregon. OAR 581, the Division 22 of that has on or about 58 categories. And those categories continue to increase over the years, legislation, policy changes from the federal government, state government, et cetera. We just have to report on it every year. We report on a few status items, either incomplete or it's complete. It's pretty straightforward on front end. On the back end, not so much. So one example is physical education minutes. Physical education specifically in elementary school has been a big ticket item for the state of Oregon for 8-9 years now. And there's a mandate on how many hours of physical education time you have to have. How this mandate came to fruition, I don't know that anybody's really certain. But for better or worse, we do have a mandate on the amount of hours you have to have physical education. There's not a mandate on how many hours you have to have for mathematics, for reading, and for writing. And so there's a lot of work that we had to do on the back end to make sure that we were leveraging our budget in a manner necessary to have the staff needed to serve all these students for those hours. Number of complications came out of that across the state. Space is one. We only have so much space, and in our schools. There are a number of schools that don't have really any space for the amount of physical education time that has to take place. So people start to get creative. People start to have structured recess, try to have lesson plans for recess, have classroom teachers teaching structured recess. And this was across the state. And then the state came out and they further refined that, and they wanted to know who the teacher was, what the credential was, where the course was being taught, and to the extent that it was being taught. So that's just one example. We could go through 58 that we would be doing that at night. And so on its face, it seems very simple, very cut and dry, very clear. Behind the scenes, it is not. And whenever legislation changes on that front, that gets put into the Division 22 standards, you have to make sure you're in compliance with those standards. What happens if you're not in compliance? If you're not in compliance for the first year, you report out to ODE that you were not in compliance. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you weren't in compliance this current school year. It means you weren't in compliance the last year, and they give you this year to get in compliance. There have been times throughout the last 20 years or so that we haven't been in compliance in some funds. But by and large, we have been. They do have a grace period, I do believe, because they understand the what's at stake and the weight of some of the policies and the changes that come our way. This year for Division 22 standards, we're in compliance on every point. There's not a point that we're out of compliance on. Some of them, I don't think Mackenzie's here tonight, our certified president. However, there's still some dialogue to be had with our folks on some of these things. PE specifically, because PE is one of those areas that gets quite congested. Some schools have a lot less space. If you've been to our schools, less PE space than others. Some have half a PE space. For example, the gym is split between lunch and a gym, and so it's a gym, maybe 50% of the day, and it's a gym/lunchroom the other 50% of the day. Right, NAS, as we know, NAS doesn't have a proper gym anywhere. It just, the kids just do PE in the cafeteria. So that puts a lot of constraints on those standards and how we go about meeting those. But we continue to have dialogue with our certified folks to make sure that we're meeting those in a fashion that the state sees in accordance with all the policy changes in the law, and in a fashion that our teachers can actually deliver on. So that's Division 22 in a nutshell, and that's the hottest part of Division 22. Questions? No, that's it.
Next on our agenda tonight is citizens agenda and guest speakers. We'll have citizens up first. I have one card here, Joyce. Just a friendly reminder that each speaker has 3-minute time limitation. The limitation is necessary to ensure that all persons wishing to speak may do so, and also that we get through our agenda items. Welcome.
My first time in the Oregon Trail School District.
Great.
Okay, I come to you because I was watching TV, watched a show on Finland and what Finland is doing with their students right now. I don't know if any of you saw it, it's been all over the news, but they are, from the time children enter school all the way up till they graduate, they teach the kids to look for false information, false narrative, spewed information. The information that's coming at us right now, there's a lot of divisiveness that takes place and people take it for face value. And they're teaching their kids to identify, look for it, and fact check. So I watched that, and then the other day, I have one social media thing that I do that's Nextdoor. And on Nextdoor, that came out. Oregon Trail School District's ranked number 11 again in the state. And I thought, wow, that's pretty good. And then what I did is I did some fact checking, because I thought to myself, how many? There's 206. But where does Oregon rank nationwide? We're 45th. Oregon is 45th, which means that we're not the dumbest, but we're down there for our schools. And we rank 11 of the 45th. I felt that there was misinformation in the way that this is presented to the citizens within the Oregon Trail School District. I would have loved to see this come out saying, We are not satisfied. Our state is 45th. Let's identify. We're at the bottom. We're failing. Our state fails. But we're 11th within our failing state. As a taxpayer who pays quite a bit towards the school district, I do not have any children, and my kids are 40 years old that grow. But I've had several foster kids come through the Oregon Trail School District. Your behavioral program was fabulous, by the way, Ms. Roberson and Ms. Stone. But I really feel like it tied into the Finland teaching their children how to identify information at face value and how to identify it and qualify it for what it really truly is. So I'd like to see the district say, we're not okay. That is not okay because Oregon is 45th. That to me as a taxpayer goes, okay, we're being honest here and we can do so much better. So that's what I wanted to discuss with you guys tonight. It got me. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is certified staff. Do we have anyone?
No, Mackenzie could make it.
Classified? So next up is consent agenda. Do we have a motion?
I so move we approve the consent agenda as presented. I'll second.
This motion has been made and seconded to accept the consent agenda as is. Any discussion? We'll go to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Action items, reading of policy IGBAF and IGBAG. Katie. I'm not even gonna try to read that fast. I'm gonna take the time.
All right, it's been a while. I'm Katie Schweitzer, I'm the Director of Student Services. It's nice to see you all. So there are 2 required policy updates in here. There's highlighted changes. They are, you can also see the highlighted ORSs that require the changes. I'm happy to answer any question around them. They're not dramatic changes. They don't really change the substance of the policies. They are required that we update them.
The public that we have here, could you highlight what the primary topics are?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, special education. And so they are around the procedural safeguards. So those are what we, we're on page 38, I believe, if you're following along. So these are provided to families and that are receiving special education, and you can see that these address kind of their rights and the procedures that go into special education. So you can see the highlighted changes to that first policy. And then if you go to the next page, this is basically kind of an overview of what an IEP is and what that looks like and what that means for students that are possibly in placements outside of a public school.
Let me say why this is important real quick, beyond the policy. We talked about the Vision 22 standards in students coming to us with IEPs, individualized education plans, come to us in myriad conditions, health conditions, congenital issues, traumatic brain injuries, etc. And it's critical that I think when we talk about policy, the understanding the overarching impact of what this does for kids. I think the last lady just said the behavioral program that we have is part of this, and we do a phenomenal job with those students. For better or worse, there are a number of students that we just can't meet the needs of in our system. We have 2 schools in our school district, Nass Elementary School and Kelso Elementary School, that have self-contained programs for the students that we can. We do handle student services, special education a bit different than other districts do. Some districts, irrespective of the student's disability, might be emotionally disturbed, might have some other health impairment. Behaviors might be unpredictable, erratic, cell phone, etc. There's a big wave of folks doing push-in models, pushing students with those disabilities into classrooms without a lot of the supports. And we do a bit of the opposite. We create classroom environments to give kids the opportunity to structure, again, primarily through some of our behavior classes and self-contained classes at the 2 elementary schools I previously named. And this is huge because they're offered a free and appropriate public education. So if we're not crossing every T, dotting every I on this policy, having a student in a self-contained environment could appear to be a more restrictive environment than the state would suggest that a student needs. So they're guaranteed that education in the least restrictive environment possible. There are a lot of people that believe that least restrictive environment is a general education classroom. We've seen too many times where students are placed in those general education classrooms. They'll throw chairs, we'll do room clears. Some people shaking their heads. You've probably seen it if you volunteered at schools, right?
Yes.
And just in the gen ed setting, that's just not productive for anybody. Just doesn't work. For kids, it doesn't work for parents, it doesn't work for teachers. And oftentimes those kids, it could be a second grader, and that kid could become, blowout Benny. And you're that for the rest of your career. You're that into 12th grade, and you never shake that. So what we do is we do our very best to uphold these policies so we can provide them a more of a self-contained program to build the stamina to get out into the general population will as much as possible, so that by the time they get to the high school, these kids can get into classrooms just like any other student. So we acclimate them to that environment. I wouldn't otherwise highlight it except for a policy like this is more critical in a district like ours, where we're not just doing a bunch of push-in, because the parental safeguards is really the crux of this policy, and parents have to fully understand their rights before you try to take up the approach that we do. Now, if you've been in one of those schools and you shook your head and we're going blowouts, I mean, we could probably imagine an environment where if we didn't have the self-contained classes, what that might be like. And so this gives us an opportunity to have dialogue with parents whose students might need to receive services and really talk about our program and the reason we do it this way at a deeper level. We've had many success stories. By the time kids get to high school, they're graduating on time, they're acclimated into the general education environment. We do have supports all the way through our high school students. If they're experiencing some kind of anxiety that they just haven't found the right controls for yet, they can go and receive supports right down the hallway, right? They have built-in plans. They can get supports for 1 period or 6 periods all the way through high school. So very critical. I don't want us to maybe just kind of gloss over, not that we're trying to, but the import that comes with this. And these laws are ever changing, probably at rates greater than PE, YPE, I don't know, but at rates greater than PE. And so the leverage that schools have to really do work differently for students is becoming less and less. And so those of you that are familiar with some of those programs, those aren't coming back en masse across the state. The opposite is happening. Those are going away. And unfortunately, some of these external programs are being maxed out. So when school districts don't have the supports necessary, they pay lots and lots of money to ship these students to other programs outside of their district, where these students then go and may or may not get the same education they get in a school like ours. And so that happens to the tune of, in some cases, $180,000. So it's more than your family, your free and appropriate public ed. It's more than parental safeguards. There's a lot more that goes into this behind the scenes, especially based on the way that we operate our programs. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Great question. Okay. Next one is reading of policy GBNAB. I believe all.
Hi there, I'm Kim Ball, I'm the secondary program director, which means I support kids' policies, typically grades 6 through 12. And we're on about page 40, or I think that's like I-3 at the very back if we're following along. And I bring this policy to be updated. And again, you'll see additions, subtractions based upon OSBA recommendations. And really this policy update clarifies language on child abuse reporting. Ultimately, it synthesizes, if you suspect a child has been abused as a district employee, you must immediately report to either through the DHS system or to local law enforcement where you are in contact with that child, so they can make very fast follow-up and do an investigation. So these policy changes would update that language to be in line with suggestions from Oregon School Boards Association. Any questions?
And this is Marshall?
I just wanted a question for our board chair. Are we not taking action on these?
So we
Just
can,
readings?
these are the readings.
First
I was
readings,
going
these
to
first
go
readings.
through these and then ask the question as to whether or not.
Oh, fine. Okay, thank you.
And then another point of import here, I think this, I think the state has done not that they don't typically policy, but I think they've done a fantastic job with, when it comes to reporting. There was a time not so long ago, board members weren't mandatory reporters. There were a number of folks that weren't mandatory reporters. And there was no closing of the loop behind the scenes when a mandatory report was made. You could make a report to law enforcement. It may not get to DHS. If you made it to DHS, it would go to law enforcement. If you made it to both DHS and law enforcement, it wouldn't go to our licensing agency. If you were a classified employee and it went to DHS, there was no real licensing agency, so it went nowhere else beyond that. So now what happens on the back end, as a mandatory reporter, you report to law enforcement, it's a wraparound. If you're a certified staff member, it goes right to DHS and it goes right to the Teachers Standards and Practices Commission that endorses all teachers. And then with classified staff, it goes to the Oregon Department of Education. So beyond us just trying to mitigate or assuage some guilt potentially by reporting, there's actually now some real teeth behind it. If you don't, and then if it's an adult within the system that's hurting a child, that loop closes so much faster than it used to. And so this was, I think, though this is pretty robust, I think the state has done a really good job at making sure we close the loop on those types of things.
Long outstanding.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next policy is GCDA.
And along the lines of improvements, GCDA used to be one page. And this is for criminal records, background checks, fingerprinting, et cetera. If you just kind of threw everybody into the mix, it made some sense. However, in the recent past, there have been examples of folks going on overnight trips with school-age students that weren't cleared as volunteers. There have been camp counselors that haven't been cleared. There have been a number of situations in which folks have been able to be unsupervised with children for a period of time that is unnecessary without any clearances at all. So what this does is it deleted the entire one page, and then we have it in your packet, about 6 pages. And it highlights all of the situations in which somebody must be cleared, right down to volunteer coaches, PSPC licensed folks, classified folks. So this does a much better job of calling out who the folks are and what that background check has to look like, what the qualifiers are for people to be unsupervised with your children. Now, I don't know that it edifies me to the extent that I like how they define unsupervised. It's kind of out there. You know what I mean? Am I in a building and is it within sight and sound? If I'm at one end of a football field and volunteers at the other end and I can't necessarily hear, but I can see. But it's much better than what it once was. So I think a lot of progress being made on that front. And there really aren't any changes to this. It's just deleted. And the policy in front of you is reflecting what the state now requires and what Oregon School Boards Association suggests we adopt. We didn't find anything in here save for, unsupervised and maybe going down some rabbit hole about how you do and don't define that, but I think this policy is far more sound in its current form.
Any questions from the board? Since these are generally first readings, but we've gotten them and they're mandatory required state SBA policies, I would entertain a motion. We don't have to act tonight, but since they're mandatory requirements. That's why I would agree with that.
I so move that we make a motion to approve the new policies as presented.
Motion has been made and seconded to accept policy IGBAF, IGBAG, GBNAB, GCDA. I do that, right? Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Aye. Okay, next on the agenda, information discussion items. Do we have any?
No, not this evening. Not this evening.
Any board members? No?
Did I not hear that we didn't have a certified staff or classified staff? I think
Yeah, we didn't have one.
we didn't have it, okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Announcements, November 5th, OTA board meeting at 5:30 p.m. That one will be also online via Zoom. November 12th will be your next school board meeting right here, 7:05 p.m. Basically same bat time, same bat channel. Oh, it's a Tuesday.
The 11th is a holiday.
Okay, thank you. Good to note. We'll mark our calendars. Anything else outstanding? Motion to adjourn or recess? We will have executive session, but I'll second it. So let's go ahead and we'll recess here and we will reconvene in 5 minutes. That way everybody can get on with the rest of their evenings while we stay here for executive session.
Marie, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'll send you a new link for exec.
Okay. Okay,
to
I
your
just
email.
realized I have 5% left. I gotta plug my phone in. Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
it'll be just a few minutes.
It's all right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.